Andrew is a master manipulator, master planner, master, whatever it is he's going to do, because he knows well in advance how he's going to twist you up in circles and then try to make it look like it was your fault. So just ask Matt Slick. Ask Matt Slick. That poor guy is getting no mercy from Andrew since Andrew's been out there this week. Out there in Idaho, they were ministering to the Mormon community out there, and that poor Matt can't even buy dinner without Andrew mocking him, saying, "I beat you to it," and putting him on video to do it.
This is Apologetics Live. To answer your questions, your host from Striving for Eternity Ministries, Andrew Rappaport.
We are live, Apologetics Live, here to answer your most challenging questions you have about God and the Bible. Whatever you have, no matter how challenging you think it is, we can answer it. And if you doubt that, if you question our ability to answer any question you have about God and the Bible, just join us here at apologeticslive.com. Just go to apologeticslive.com, scroll down to the little StreamYard icon, join us there, ask your most challenging question. Just remember one thing: I don't know is a perfectly good answer. This is a ministry of Striving Fraternity. I'm your host, Andrew Rappaport, the executive director of Striving Fraternity and the Christian podcast community, of which this podcast is a proud member. The live stream does become a podcast. Make sure you're following it there so you never miss an episode. So we have a new co-host with us. Drew couldn't make it, so I last minute, and I literally mean last minute, about 50 minutes ago, said, "Hey, could you join?" And he's like, "Sure. What's the topic?" Now, I like that about a guest co-host. He says yes before asking the topic. So, I could have thrown anything at him, but no, he joined anyway. Mr. Chris Honholds, who we heard in the intro there. And just for the record, Chris, it was not me that was posting the videos. Other people were taking video because Matt he had planned to buy me dinner or lunch, and he wanted it on video. So the videos that I shared at that time was simply because Matt planned it and it failed. Now, we know that Matt got me here in an epic way. Just go back to episode 100. Matt brought me back and bought me dinner after 9 years of trying.
That was classic.
It was classic. So we do have an update on it, though, Chris. So Matt and I were in Utah. We did a debate together on the charismatic gifts, and Matt drove down. We go after I did 8 sessions and then a debate with Matt Slick. So Matt just casually comes down and is all comfortable, relaxed, and preparing for one debate. But we go out to dinner after one of the nights, and Matt, he figures, hey, let's go to a Mexican place. Andrew doesn't know Spanish. He talks to the lady behind the cash register in Spanish, thinking, I don't know what he's doing, as he hands her his credit card, and she's not charging it, but waiting for my bride and I to come over and ring up. And Matt decides to go to the restroom. Well, she's like, okay. And I just pointed to something on the board behind her, so she'd turn and look. And as she does, I pick up Matt's credit card. And when it's time to pay, I give her mine, and she looks down. I said, "Oh, I have his." And so she used mine as Matt comes around the corner from the bathroom looking, and I'm holding his credit card. And he goes, "You didn't."
You would think by this point Matt would know better than to walk away.
Yes, you think. Well,
Matt, come on, you're smart, one of the smartest men I know. What are you thinking?
He doesn't quite learn from his mistakes. What can I tell you? But he will be coming on. I will say that. I just scheduled a time with him. We will have him on. I think we're planned in October. I forget when it is. Let me look. Maybe it was August. Maybe we did have a date in August. Yes. No, it's. Oh, that's strange. I booked him for September. That doesn't work. I'm going to reschedule with him. Okay.
Oops.
Yeah, because September we got a special series coming up, and I will cover that later in the show. All right. So What I want to do today, and folks, just I see that StreamYard made some changes, and I don't quite know. Like there were, just like there's things that they used to have up here. Like I used to be able to see the names. Like your name would be down here in a banner. I can't seem to get that. But what I do want to do is this show is going to be not so much political, though. Whenever you mention Trump, everyone jumps into knee-jerk reactions and gets political. It's more going to deal with the assassination attempt. As I titled this, Trump assassination attempt is not what you think. I want to be a voice of reason. That's how I prayed in realizing that I have Chris here. And Chris is the co-host of a podcast named Voice of Reason Radio. So but I do want to kind of ask folks to just take a step back from all the things they're thinking and all of the different views that people have been having on this, because I believe that there's a lot of things people are getting wrong, and I want us just to be able to step back, evaluate, and as Christians, we shouldn't be having knee-jerk reactions, things like that. Okay? So there's going to be a bunch of things we're going to address, some that people won't like. I get it. Some that people are going to think is, some people have come to their conclusions. They think they think they know everything with the situation, and I think there's some things you might find incorrect. So let's begin with the fact that there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. Maybe. Okay. There's some people, and let's go to the gamut. Chris, I don't know what you've heard. And by the way, Chris has had like less than an hour to prepare. So he
I didn't even prepare. I was driving home.
Yeah, but I'm sure driving home you were like, oh, okay, what am I going to say?
No, I was busy stuffing my face with dinner. So
while driving?
Yes.
Do you know that's the second biggest cause of accidents? Not being on the cell phone, but driving while eating.
Dude, when you text me as I'm leaving work, I don't have a lot of choice.
Do you know what the number one cause of most accidents are?
No, not a clue.
People think it's cell phones, and that's number 3. Eating's number 2. It's farting. Now, what are you laughing at? I understand you don't know what farting is. Farting is putting your makeup on in the car.
Okay,
that is what it's called. Don't blame me for its name.
I was going to go somewhere completely different with it. Biological warfare. Driving people off the road. I could see that happening.
Yeah, no, the number one way that accidents are caused are people put. I was going to say women, but now we have men who do it too. But putting makeup on in the car. So this is going to be an episode. If you guys want to come in, join us, just go to apologeticslive.com, go to the StreamYard icon, and you could join there. So, okay. So I was mentioning differences with StreamYard, and KT says, does this mean we can chat and Andrew won't see it? I guess I just answered that question. That would be scary if KT and others had the ability to chat about the show. If you don't watch live, folks, if you listen to the podcast and you don't watch live, the chat is a world unto its own. Sometimes it's right in line with what we're talking about. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is they're evangelizing. We've had that, but I want to take a look at some of the things. One of the things immediately that I noticed was the news, because the news articles immediately after Trump leaves rally after one was after gunshot. Trump falls down after noise and has to be ushered out of rally. Yeah. Noise. It was very entertaining to see how they quickly adjusted it when they realized they couldn't avoid thousands of people with phones that are taking video of Trump, and it's all over the internet. So they had to admit, and even that night when they woke Joe Biden up, ushered, got him dressed and brought him out a couple of hours later, he would not admit it was an assassination attempt. I may agree with him, but we'll get to that. But there are those who will say, and have been saying, that this is nothing more than a PR stunt. Okay. I watch both sides to get an idea. And I'm going to encourage folks, share this out, because we're probably going to say some things you haven't heard. Okay. At least I'm going to say some things you probably haven't heard. But when you look at what the left is saying, the left, there were people saying that this was nothing more than a packet of blood that either Trump had on him or his security detail had on him, that when he fell down, it was all acted. And they were saying he's an actor after all. So he fell down, and, they put this fake blood on him so that he could stand up. And they say when he had the bandage at the RNC, that was all faked. Okay, first off, I will say the people that were wearing fake bandages,
that's ridiculous. Yeah, that's dumb.
Okay,
it's dumb. Stop.
Yeah, but there's a number of people now, Chris. This is one thing I do find very interesting. The number of people that I saw that was claiming that this was a false flag are the same people that say that January 6th was a true insurrection.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the one where everybody did an unscheduled tour of the Capitol and didn't actually, try to kill anybody or take over anything.
Yeah, there's 3 guys in jail because they left their guns in the hotel because they knew they couldn't bring them to D.C. That's a weird behavior for people wanting to do an insurrection.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's again, before we even get into the various aspects of it, I mean, this is, we're seeing now, as you pointed out, literally thousands of people with video cameras that are far more advanced. Even the most basic cell phone has far more video capability than anything we used, say, at the last attempt on a president's life, Ronald Reagan. Everything, it's more advanced. We can see literally every angle. We have drones, we have camera footage, we have everything, and the media cannot get out of the mindset that it can still control the narrative. And thank you to people like Elon Musk who have actually, I mean, if this had happened 4 years ago, everybody would have shut it down and we wouldn't have gotten what we have. But thank you for people like Elon Musk who really did actually protect free speech by opening that up and allowing these things. But they still somehow think that they can control the narrative when you literally have thousands upon thousands of people every day on the internet uploading video, and you can't stop it. And so, yeah. Oh, if loud noise and he crumpled to the ground. No, it was a gunshot. You know that. We know that. Everybody knew that, but you didn't want to admit it because that's positive press to Trump. It would build sympathy for Trump. They are still attempting to do this, and that's why it's like, oh, it was the Biden's recent speech talking, basically nodding toward January 6th, talking about it as the worst attack since the Civil War. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. But they're still attempting to do that, and that's why everything that's happening now. This is one of the most significant events that's happened in modern history. What are we talking about? Oh, that old man Biden has stepped out of the race, and young person Kamala is running. It is an attempt to control the narrative, and they still are thinking decades ago that they can control the narrative, and they're not quite as powerful as they think they were in the past.
Well, she's not quite so young at like 60, but
Right. Well, that's his comment about the younger generation. I'm
Yeah.
just
I mean,
he said.
J.D. Vance would be younger, right? I mean, she's
Look, if 60's young, hey, I'm a kid
Yeah.
at 50. I have put me in there. I'll run.
yeah. You could do a better job than Kamala, I'm sure. But there's a couple of things that you said that's very interesting. One, it is interesting that the free speech of X, because when you think about it, Joe Biden retired, and maybe we'll get to this later. He steps out of the race, and it's done on Twitter or X.
Yeah, it was a weird scenario.
Weird, on his own letterhead with a signature that's not his. Like, I wonder what happened when he woke up in the morning and discovered that he resigned.
Like, hey Joe, here's your ice cream, and by the way, you're not going to be president next year.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot that we could look at with that, but let's get into the something that you did say that is staying in line with the Trump assassination attempt, and that is, Time Magazine. Did you see their cover?
I'm trying to remember which one that is.
They had a cover that they almost went to press with the picture of Trump, fist in the air, flag behind him, bleeding from the ear.
Yeah.
And they changed the cover because that might make him look good. When is it that journalism is supposed to be making a decision on whether a political candidate looks good or not?
Yeah.
It's that goes to what you said, Chris, about the power they think they have. You're seeing it with Kamala Harris now. They decided she's now the candidate. They've decided it. She's never had a vote. No one's voted for her. They're saying they're doing it for democracy, while they do everything opposite democracy, because the Democrat elites have handpicked somebody and are deciding who the candidate's going to be. And therefore, we have to deal with that. And so that's not democracy. And so what I do want to point out, though, as we think about it, here you have Kamala Harris, who for 3 years now has been referred to publicly as the border czar. That was her job. She was given the job of taking care of the border,
which she never actually did ever.
No. And there's plenty of interviews about her in this position being called the border czar. And all of a sudden, as of yesterday, everything's being scrubbed. You have newspapers and magazines that refer to her that way. And what do? They're saying that was a misprint. So they want to erase all of that. They're going to. So the media,
George Orwell would be proud.
The media who feels that they can't put anything out that would make Trump look in a good light is going to try to rewrite history to make anything that's negative toward Kamala Harris be okay. Look, I don't care which side of the aisle. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm not saying be pro-Trump, anti-Trump, pro-Kamala, anti-Kamala. I'm just saying the fact is that's not journalism, right? Journalism is supposed to be getting down to the facts and supposed to be hard on both sides to do the investigating and know what's really happening. And I think because of the lack of journalism, we have wild accusations and assumptions of what happened with Trump's assassination attempt. Okay, so some say on the left, it was nothing but a publicity stunt. On the right, some of the things I hope that we're going to cover tonight. Was it planned by the Biden administration or the FBI or the CIA or one of the other government agencies? Okay, that's a question that's been challenged. A lot of people think that's what's going on. Was it an inside job? Was it the Secret Service that was trying to kill Trump? Okay. Was he denied Secret Service yes, they did put in request for more Secret Service people or resources, and they were denied. Kind of strange. The guy that denied it was not the head of the Secret Service until now, right? The head of the Secret Service wasn't the one that denied it. It was her second in command, and that's now first in command. He just got a promotion. People are looking at that. So was this some sort of conspiracy? Okay. These are difficult questions, and I'm going to explain why I think these are difficult questions. Occam's razor, the simplest answer is usually the right one. When we look at all of these facts, it looks like the easiest answer is that there was some plot to kill Trump. Okay. And I'm going to go through details of that. But that aside, okay, I think that I want to provide some information for this audience to have a more balanced view of this. And this is just education, right? What do we do here at Apologetics Live? Not only do apologetics defending the faith, the Christian faith, but we also want to teach people how to do it. So politics is one of these things where people get knee-jerk reactions sometimes and kind of throw things out because they're listening to too much, whichever side, conservative or liberal, listening to too much. And what we need to do is learn how to be discerning. We need to learn how to evaluate these things. And basically what we need to do is we need to be able to use logic, common sense, and critical thinking. And I see a lot of people that are not applying that here. And some that as I say, we'll get to, I'm going to have a different view, but I'm going to we have Brad backstage. He has some questions about voting for Trump. So I'm going to bring him in first, and then we'll get to some of the stuff with the assassination attempt. So Brad, welcome.
Hi guys. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. So, this whole thing about voting for Trump is I've had a very hard time trying to land on what to do or what the best thing to do is and the most God honoring thing to do. And just trying to, I see so many different viewpoints and just trying to just make the best decision possible. So I guess my question is this I guess as of right now, I would say I would be leaning towards as much as I want to, I would be leaning towards not voting for Trump because of an argument that I can't seem to answer. I was wanting to see if you guys might possibly have a response to this that I haven't thought of. And it's basically, we would wholeheartedly agree to say that, voting for Biden would be wicked and evil for a Christian to do, correct? Because of its stance on abortion and LGBT, right?
We're not going to vote for Biden, but Kamala would be even worse.
Oh yeah. No,
she's more leftist than he is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it is kind of funny because Biden was supposed to be like the moderate. People were saying they were voting for him for moderate and not the crazy, Bernie Sanders. And yet now we have Kamala, who is the only one that's to the left of Bernie Sanders.
Right.
And Joe has pretty much been to the left of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, correct. So more or less where I'm going with it is that if we would say it's evil and wrong for a Christian to vote for Biden, primarily because of his stance on abortion and LGBT issues, wouldn't that same standard be applied to Trump and his stance on abortion and LGBT? And more or less would it not be more or less an answer to that be pragmatic? As much as I really do, I can't seem to come up with an answer. I just didn't know if you guys might have something.
Well, Chris has something first, and then I'll go.
So let's just make a distinction on something with regard to that, because I've heard this and I understand the argument, where people are coming from. When you have the Democrat Party, their stated stance, their platform is to advance these issues. They are LGBT all the way. Trans rights or human rights. That's as Biden said, when he ran previously, that this was the human rights issue of our day. They want a federal law enshrining abortion protecting it. They want, kids being, getting access to trans surgeries, medications, etc. They are specifically making this their platform. The things that God hates, they have said that's what we support a platform and push for. When it comes to the Republican Party and Donald Trump, they are not doing that. What they have done, and it is despicable, and they should be held accountable for, is they've softened their stance. They said, well, if we continue to say no abortion at all, if we continue to say no homosexual marriage, those are losing propositions for us. So we're going to soften our stance. They're not platforming it. They're not making it, we're going to protect abortion. We're going to advance LGBT. They are backstepping, which again, I think is despicable. And every Christian needs to decide where that line is going to be for them. But they are not advancing it as the Democratic Party is. So that's the distinction I want to start with. Secondly, what we do know is that, as happened in the previous administration, when as much as Trump likes to say he helped overturn Roe v. Wade, as I think it was Dr. White pointed this out, it wasn't him that did that. It was the Supreme Court. And the reason the Supreme Court got what they were is that he was given a list of constitutionalist justices or judges that would hold to the Constitution, treat it as a fixed document, not a living document, as some want to. So Chris,
and he went with those because remember,
yes.
Because he wanted constitutionalists versus Bush, who had lists like that, but went with guys that were more, willing to compromise, and that's why we have had problems.
Right. So when it comes to what are you voting for? Mm-hmm. Number one, recognize there is a very big distinction between those two parties, and number two, what are the policies and what are they surrounding themselves with in order to advance those policies? You're not voting for someone who's going to say, I want abortion at every stage enshrined into the federal law. Mm-hmm. They may not want to create a law that would ban it, which is despicable that they won't do that, but they are not trying to advance it. Additionally, when we are talking about, okay, we have the Trump and the Republican Party as it is now, they would be a stopgap, a measure to prevent basically a foot on the accelerator plunging us off the cliff. Right. Maybe they've got their foot off the gas and it's idling toward the cliff, but it's not running headlong. That gives the Christians time over the next 4 years to determine, hey, what are we going to vote for? I would argue, and I've said this online, that the Christians at this stage do not owe their allegiance to the Republican Party. And the reason the Republican Party is getting away with what it's doing is it recognizes, much like the Democratic Party believes they own certain ethnic demographic blocks for the vote, Republican Party is doing that with groups like Christians. Oh, we own that vote. Well, I think we need to no longer ensure that they have that vote. We have opportunities through primaries, through local elections, etc., to advance, those who will actually uphold that which is right and good. And so voting for someone like Trump allows us that time to advance those things forward and to petition, groups like the Republican Party. If you want our vote, you need to represent us. Otherwise, you don't get it. So that's my argument, is that Trump is problematic on multiple levels. He is far from an ideal candidate. Yeah, he's far from an ideal candidate. I really would prefer DeSantis. I don't want to see Trump back in office.
Me too. Yeah.
But that's not going to happen. So now the question is, I'm going to say this up front, and this gets all kinds of people mad at me. You need to go to the scriptures, read them, apply them, pray about it, and then cast your vote according to your biblically informed conscience. And the reason I say that gets people mad at me is because, you're gonna go third party, you're gonna throw away your vote. Look, I believe there are Christians who are going to do that and vote for Trump. They're just going to. So vote according to your biblically informed conscience. But there is a distinction between these two parties, and one of them is going to drive us straight off the cliff into a Marxist regime, which we've already kind of been dealing with the last 4 years. So do we want to slow that progress down and try to give ourselves more opportunity to advance people we really want in office? Or are we going to say, I cannot, on the basis of my biblically informed conscience, no, I can't vote for this guy. Hey, if you can't, you can't. You vote according to your conscience. Do not let me, Andrew, or anybody else push you into a vote that would violate your conscience. But vote for the person you believe is going to best represent what God wants for you and wants for the nation that's before that you have an opportunity to influence. That would be my argument.
Okay, so and let me give you mine. I mean, one, this could have been a very different election because we actually have the records to go off of, right? Trump was president. If it was Trump versus Biden, we have both of their records and know exactly how they would do things. So as far as the abortion issue, Trump has been the most pro-life, anti-abortion president we've ever had. He's the first president ever, even the guys that said they were Christians, he's the first one to go to the March for Life, made a big stand. He's the one that put people onto the Supreme Court that would overturn Roe versus Wade. Okay, so we look at that, and I wanted to put this comment up when Chris was talking. D basically, I think was giving you a hard time there, Chris. She was saying compromise. So I wanted to put that up because I want to address that as well, because I want us to ask this question: why are we voting? Why do we in this country give its citizens, not people who are here, citizens, the right to vote? I say that specifically because right now the Democrats want to open up to just anyone who is here, which is what we knew back when Clinton was president. He did the motor voter bill where if you get a driver's license, you get a voter ID or a voting registration. By the way, when you get a voter registration, you get a voter ID. And the purpose of that is so you have an ID to show that you're registered to vote. So when they say, oh, it's racist to ask for ID, people wouldn't know how to get ID. Did they know how to vote or register to vote? Because it came with an ID. Like, it's not rocket science. The only reason they don't want voter ID is because they want to cheat. That is the only reason, because you need ID for everything. But we have to look, and Chris brought up the fact that you have one party right now that is completely anti-democracy. Okay? I'll agree. The Republicans are not the solutions to all our problems, but the Democrats are the cause of all our problems. That's a quote from Dan Bongino. But the fact is that is true. I think far too many people will look to politicians for the solution to the real problems in America. The real problems is the fact that, Christians need to be sharing the gospel more so that more people get saved. The real problem is that the gospel's not going forth in America. And I think a lot of it is too many Christians know the Republican Party message. They don't know the gospel message. And so that is a major issue that needs to be addressed within Christians. But our problem is a moral one. It's because of the fact that there's no shame anymore in America. I mean, shame was kind of gone with Bill Clinton. But so you do have a thing that when you're voting for is between two parties, because unfortunately, like it or not, we're a two-party system. I will get to the whole thing of voting conscience and voting third party. I'm going to get to that in a moment. But right now, we are voting. We have a responsibility to vote to keep our democracy. That is part of the reason we have in our founding documents the right to vote was to keep the democracy. We have a party, as you heard from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in her first rally, stated that the first thing she's going to do is stack the courts and start to make it where we could have voting by ballot everywhere. So what are the two main things she wants to do? She wants to make it easy to cheat and make it, and they don't like the way that they got one part of the government they don't have control of. So what they want to do is establish it so they have control forever. Okay? That is anti-democracy. I mean, I know they accuse us, like the right of being anti-democracy, and January 6th was a horrible day for democracy. What was it they were protesting for January 6th? What was it that they wanted? An audit. That is following with democracy. They wanted to show their support for the Republicans, for the 17 Republicans that were going to stand up and ask for an audit. That's what they were protesting for. So they weren't trying to overthrow. That's what the left was doing with the BLM riots. For 2 years, what was it they said they wanted? To fundamentally change this system because it is inherently racist. And so, we have to evaluate all this. But to your question, Brad, right now, my biggest concern on what's on this ballot, this election, is Christianity. Okay? People who follow this show, follow me, know my background. Because of my Jewish upbringing, we studied the Holocaust a lot. I've always said this: what someone gets in power with, they stay in power with. Adolf Hitler got into power by using the Jewish people as a scapegoat. Oh, they have money, they have power, they're the cause of all our problems. And he was able to rally all of the different political parties because that way he refocused everything on one common enemy that they can all have. But once you get in power with that, you lose that power if you don't keep having that enemy that everyone focuses on. Mm-hmm. And so right now you have a party, the Democrat Party, that is blaming, well, now Jewish people as well, but blaming Christianity for all of the ills of this country. The reason people can't love who they want to love is because of Christians. The reason people can't just abort their children if they want to is because of Christians. Christians are stopping us everywhere of doing what we want. That is the message they're conveying. When they say that the federal government is targeting Christians, and they're using it in a broad sense, Roman Catholics, anyone that's going outside an abortion clinic, any Christians that are going into a school board meeting, they're looking into their lives because they're Christians. And again, broad sense Christian. The FBI, the federal government, was doing that at the behest of a party. So what is on the ballot really for this year is Christianity. Because if the Democrats win, if they get the House and the Senate and the White House, you are going to see more laws that within, my guess, 5 years, Christianity will probably be illegal. Okay? They already are looking to, and you can go back on my Rap Report show, Andrew Rappaport's Rap Report podcast. I did a show back when Biden first got into office, evaluating basically, people don't always go and search this, but I do. But there are documents of what defines domestic terrorists. And if you look at that document, you going to church every Sunday makes you a domestic terrorist. And that's not a joke. That's one of the things. Meeting weekly with a regular group of people is one of the things that they identify as a domestic terrorist. Now, that's very broad. But, they've applied that to Christians. So I would say the biggest issue as a Christian is Christianity is on the ballot. So let me address, and I know this is a longer answer, but let me address what Chris was saying with the voting your conscience. I believe we have a responsibility to vote according to God's will. Problem, We don't know what his will is. God's will may be for Kamala Harris to be president. God's will might be for the Democrats to put someone else in there, and that's, whoever it's going to be, that's going to be God's will. But I had this discussion with someone who wanted to say that I was somehow being sinful for saying that I would vote for a Trump or a DeSantis, and I, like Chris, would have preferred DeSantis. But I'll vote for Trump because God's will is that there's only two men that are going to be elected, or two people. It's going to be from the Republican or Democrat Party. That's God's will. This guy was telling me, you have to vote your conscience. Last time I didn't vote for Trump, I voted for, this other guy. And I said, okay, how many votes did the guy get? And he got like 300 votes. Is he ever going to win with 300 votes? Never. That's not God's will. And if people want to say, oh, but God may do that if all the Christians would just do this. Well, the reality is there's not enough Christians that know these, minor people's names that's ever going to happen. And if you want to say a miracle could happen, okay, well, then the miracle can happen apart from me voting for the two people that I have a choice at. Okay. RFK Jr., he doesn't even have a chance. Okay. He might be a spoiler. They're trying to keep any news of him out, but the reality is I'm going to vote God's will, and God's will right now is going to be either, Donald Trump or whoever the Democrats put up. Okay. Now it'll be funny, by the way, if not funny in a good way, but if there's another assassination attempt on Trump and he's shot and killed, you watch how the Democrats will try to say that, they can't replace Trump. It's got to be just an empty ballot.
Oh, you can be sure of that.
So
maybe a civil war.
Yeah. So I don't know, Brad, if that helps.
Yeah. Those are. I really appreciate your all's answers on that. I think where I'm still kind of just trying to get through it and stuff like that. I'm just curious this little spin on it and stuff is when you're voting for somebody, or like we're voting, as far as for Trump and Vance and as far as what they have said about, like what, I guess for an example, like with JD Vance about saying, I think it should be allowed for more or less the, abortion pill to be readily available for, as far or available for, as far as for women to take.
Mm-hmm.
I guess more or less is that possible for like a Christian to vote, as far as what he said, and we're voting for that person, but to not be more or less not be held responsible for that, and saying more or less that we're culpable and
yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
culpable for what he's doing.
I'm not a one-issue voter, okay, and I'm also not voting for pastor. I'm voting for president, and I see a major difference between those two. I'm voting for the one who can govern the nation. He's not there to be to be forcing people into morality. I mean, I think he should be moral, but when Trump came out with his view, I mean, I'm looking at Trump, and the way he was when he was in office was the most pro-life president.
Mm-hmm.
He is the one that highlighted the CRT before anyone else. He was the one that said, we got to get this out of all branches of government. Okay. So we see that as the way he governed. Now, the Democrats had only one issue where they get people excited to vote for him. It's abortion. So he comes out, makes a statement that took abortion off the table. Now, is he going to govern that way? Or did he say that because he knows this gets this off the table, and then the Democrats have nothing to run on? I mean, the only thing they have to run on is Trump bad, Trump bad. They got nothing positive to run on. Even for their own folks, they're not even trying, because now the abortion issue's off the table. So was that a political move? Could be.
And one other thing I'd like to offer is this: is that when we're voting for someone, I do hear what you're saying. If I vote for them and JD Vance has said this, aren't I endorsing what he said? I think we can, recognize that number one, and I'll tell you right now, I am not a pragmatist. Pragmatism is the death of the Christian church in a lot of ways. Professing Christian church, the true church will not die, obviously.
Right.
And so we compromise a lot because we think it's going to get us something, and that's simply not how the church should operate. So I am not a pragmatist, but I also recognize reality. The reality is there's nobody that I'm going to vote for that I'm going to agree with 100%. Now, unlike, I would say that when it comes to the issue of abortion, I absolutely support the idea of abolitionism. I believe that, it should be not only made illegal, I believe anybody, whether man or woman, who pays for the death of an infant in the womb should be held accountable for murder for hire, pure and simple. I don't care how that makes people feel. But I also recognize that this is the real world, and that at this stage, we're not there yet. We're not going to get to there yet. And I know that makes my abolitionist brethren angry with people like me, but the simple fact of the matter is that I want to vote for people who are going to put as many stopgaps in place to, keep babies from dying. So
Mhm.
JD Vance is dead wrong. I don't know if he's just ill-informed, stupid, or evil, but the simple fact is he's wrong for what he says in that. Now, my question is, as vice president, what is he going to do that would actually make that happen? The reality is not much. He might be the deciding vote on a split decision in the House, or in Congress, but that's mostly not going to happen given the vast majority of votes that happen. And the reality is his role as vice president is going to be very limited. So do I vote for someone and for the team that is going to is going to not seek to advance the murder of children in the womb as a national platform? Let's just make that happen at all stages. Or am I going to vote for someone who's going to put or at least going to do something to slow that process down so more babies are alive? States that have made it illegal can continue to keep it illegal. That's where I would stand, because I'm not going to agree with every single policy or every single thing that a politician advances. It's just that simple. Is abortion kind of the single issue for me? Absolutely. But I also recognize that with the state that we are currently in, one is going to make it a guarantee that more babies are murdered. One is going to at least keep at a minimum, the current status quo in place, where more children are being protected in the womb as we continue to fight that fight.
But Chris,
So-
it is a legitimate thing to say, though, that there is a concern
Oh,
when
yeah.
they're removing it from the party platform.
Absolutely. It's absolutely disgusting that they've done that.
Is it, and this is where the challenge is it, hey, we're just doing this to be more populist? I mean, look, first off, the big struggle I have is the fact that so many conservatives in America are looking to libertarians for leadership. Donald Trump is not a conservative. Elon Musk is not a conservative.
No.
They're libertarians. So they're conservative financially,
Yeah,
but not socially. And so the fact that the main people everyone's looking to aren't even conservative tells you that we need to raise up genuine conservatives within the movement. And that's why I think I was supportive of DeSantis, because he seems to be a genuine conservative that can expound and explain conservative policies. Trump doesn't really do that, but he gets conservative things passed.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because he sees problems. I mean, I know, maybe Elon is becoming more conservative. If you heard his recent interview, the reason he really made the change where he's putting his foot down is because his own son was, he was told his son would commit suicide if he didn't get him on, puberty blockers and transgender medicine, and he said he lost his son. So it was something personal that got him to wake up to the reality of what's happening. But I understand your concern. And and it is a legitimate concern as far as the party. Look, the Republican Party started because the Whigs and the Democrats wouldn't make a stand on the issue of slavery, and they stood up on the issue of slavery, and that was the reason the Republican Party was founded. They took the Whigs and Democrats from both parties that were against slavery, and they started their own party. But that was such a major issue that it could get the support that within by the second election they could have a Republican president, in Abraham Lincoln. But we don't even have the Whig Party anymore. It's gone now. Right? So yes, can that happen? It can, but there has to be a much larger national movement for that to be. Right now, abortion is a state issue, and yet we see more abortions now than before when it was a federal. So, the reality is it's just moved to the states, which I think is better, because now we should put pressure on the state legislatures to outlaw abortion as murder. And to the abolitionists that may be watching or listening, Chris was said some things that abolitionists would hate. Well, the reality is, for abolitionists who say we need immediacy, and yet they go to churches to try to get people into the movement, or they go out on the streets and hold signs, either at churches or in public, you're doing nothing to actually stop or end abortion. The only thing you should be doing is going and being a lobbyist in Washington. That's it. You should be doing nothing else if you really believe in immediatism, because everything else is incrementalism. Trying to get other Christians and other people aware of the issue of abolitionism is it by a very definition is not immediatism. Okay. And so
Is familiar with sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just curious. Are you guys familiar? Because a lot of this, as far as my view was, as far as where it leaned towards not voting for Trump, I guess it started by just listening to. You guys familiar with Abolitionist Rising?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I just was curious if you guys were aware of them, and as far as what do you think of them? What do you think of Abolitionist Rising?
Yeah, I mean, what they're looking to do is vote for someone that's not God's will. And it's the reason it's not God's will is because they do this every year, and they want to vote for someone who has, he must be a Christian. There was a guy that was very supported, I think in 2016, that we talked about here on this show, because this guy, he was a Mormon. It turns out he was Mormon, and people were like, you have to vote for him because he's an abolitionist. And it was like, yeah, and you guys want to cover up the fact that he's a Mormon, and you want to say that this is who Christians should vote for because he's Christian. Mm-hmm. So the reality is that the only two candidates right now, at least in this election, that have a chance of winning is right now, it looks like Trump and Kamala. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so those are the choices. So and this is what I say with the, when I'm talking about the immediacy, Abolition Rising, AHA, the rest of them, there'll be those that say it has to be immediate, no incremental steps as they incrementally try to get there. And that's the problem that I have with it. If they held themselves to the same standard, maybe I would say, okay, I use the term abolition for abortion before AHA made it popular. Okay. And all these other groups. I was using it back when Ray Comfort did the 180 film. When I used to make the argument similar to what Ray would do with, stopping Hitler and things like that. Once Ray you started using that, and we did the 180 film, now everyone thought I was just ripping off Ray Comfort. So I came up with something different because that's how I do things. I was at the time reading a book on John Brown, the abolitionist here in America to end slavery. And I realized that there is a direct correlation between slavery and abortion. And that correlation is, it is an ownership issue. You are claiming you can own another human being. There is fundamentally no difference between this is my property and this is my body. And that's when I started using the term abolition to end abortion. There's others who used it in a different way. I'm not going to say they got it from me. There's the guys that started AHA, I don't think they even knew who I was at the time. So I'm definitely not saying they got it from me. I do know I was using it before them, because I know when they said they started using it. But the reality is that I have a different view when it comes to how we get there, because even in slavery, we did not do it immediately. There were a ton of small incremental steps that were fought to get to abolishing slavery. And the same is going to happen with abortion.
You know, and I would just add, I mean, when it comes to abolition groups, I have nothing but respect for the work they're trying to do. I want to make that very, very clear. And I have zero problem with them advocating for candidates that they believe will, be the best choices for those, whether it's local, state, federal elections. I have zero problem with them advancing candidates and supporting them. What I would argue for with the arguments that they make is what that I make against people who demand that you vote for Trump. This is an issue where you're conscious. This got me in trouble online because people wanted to, basically ignore everything I said because of one thing, how I phrased it. But when it comes to our ability to vote, there is one thing we cannot do. Our conscience must be bound by, which is we cannot advocate those who make their policies to elevate and platform sin as if it is a good thing. So when it comes to the Democrat Party, which says we want to murder children, we want to mutilate children, we want to advance sexual immorality,
have rumors for children,
right? So our conscience must be bound there. But beyond that, when it comes to candidates, whether you're pro-Trump or you're seeking pro-abolition candidate, we cannot bind one another's consciences. And so I've seen people who are just hardcore, you must vote for Trump, or you're okay with transing kids, and you're okay with all these things, and they're trying to bind the consciences of Christians, which I would say is it's not for them to do. I would also argue with people like Abolition Rising. Look, you want to do what we're doing right now and debate and discuss, man, go for it. Let's have those discussions. Let's try to convince one another. That's what we're called to do. But when you basically demand, which is what some of these individuals do, that you must not vote for Trump, you must vote for this candidate because he's an abolitionist. Now you're binding a conscience, and you have no authority by Scripture to do so. What we've done in this particular conversation, which has already taken half the show, which is a good conversation, by the way, I'm glad for it. This is what we should do. And you came on here with a question, and you wanted to know, okay, where do you stand? How would you approach this? And I think that's a fantastic way for every Christian to have this discussion. And ultimately, when you go into the voting booth, neither I or Andrew have any right to demand that you vote for the candidate we feel is best. We may try to persuade you, and we hope you hear it and go forward with that, but we cannot demand that of you. And so when I see individuals, which I won't say this is every abolitionist, but I have seen some who are so hardcore, so committed that they want to denigrate Christians who do not agree with them. Just like people who say, if you don't vote for Trump, then XYZ, something wrong with you.
That's what I
and
had.
I've got a problem with that.
The gentleman I was referring to was basically, I had to block him because he was telling me I wasn't even Christian.
Yeah.
If I didn't vote his way,
you have no authority to do that. None. Yeah. No authority. Right. And so what I would just argue is that, brother, whatever you take from this, Brad, is that you've taken this discussion and you've plugged it into your mind and into your heart and soul, and you're praying over it. And don't let myself or Andrew or Abolition Rising or anybody tell you you must vote a certain way. Rather, take all these things into account, pray, look to God's word, and decide where you're going to vote. Do I believe that the best way, even though I am not a pragmatist, is to say we are voting against the push and of godless, tyrannical lunacy that's been done for the last 4 years? I believe that is a valid argument. And I believe that the persons who are best going to accomplish that is the opposition to Harris' campaign.
Right.
And that's going to be Trump and JD Vance.
And
do I believe they have a ton of baggage? Yeah. And I believe over the next 4 years, Christians need to get to work.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say, look, my personal view, that's all this is voting for right now. This might change in future elections. You could have some third party guy that actually gets a national platform. Like I think if Donald Trump would have run third party, he probably could have been someone that could win third party, just because people. I think so many conservatives like Trump just because there's such a lack of leadership, and he actually provides leadership and speaks in a way that average Americans can understand. And so I think that's the allure to him. But I think if I vote for someone who's only going to get a couple hundred votes, I'm throwing away my vote. Now, just to put some comments up here, KT has a really good point. She says, if you don't vote at all, as I've said to someone before, someone will likely vote in your name. Better to vote for someone who won't win than nobody. And I'm going to agree. I mean, look, I had that happen.
Point.
The very first time that I could vote for president, I figured I'd vote after work. I go to the voting booth and I was told I already voted. And I went home, I go to my apartment, I get a knock on the door and someone's like, "Hey, did you vote yet?" I said, and I'm like, I was told I couldn't vote because someone voted in my name. And this lady goes, "Don't worry, we have plenty of other names that you could vote for." And I'm like, so she's admitting that they are the type of people that use my name to vote. And I'm like, I go, "Well, just out of curiosity, who are you with?" And she goes, "The Democrat National Convention, get out the vote." And I went, "And you're the ones that voted in my name." And she said they were going to bust me over there to go, and they were just going to give me someone's name to go vote for. So in that sense, you're right, KT. It is better to vote, and for a third party than to let someone else vote for the Democrats in your name. Okay. Because that's exactly what they do. So does that help you, Brad?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate y'all's answers and taking the time to go through that. Do you mind if I just ask just one more thing, or do you guys need to move on?
No. Go for it.
So I guess another question that was asked to me and stuff like that, which I thought was a fair question, and just curious to see where you guys would stand on this too. Where I think the question was asked, it's like, what would it take? What would it take for Trump to lose your vote? I guess more like, where would that line be where it would be, I can't in good conscience vote for him at this point anymore. Anything going forward, I guess, is that.
I think I would simply say he would, do what the Democrats are doing and literally platform those things that the Democrats are doing. If he were to start doing that, if tomorrow he came out and said, "You know what, I think, we're gonna promote these godless issues rather than the things that they have been doing," I would absolutely say no, you've lost my vote. And that's where I said, like, the issue with the Republicans backing off, that's where I'm saying, like, over these next 4 years, Christians need to start telling Republicans, if you're going to do that, we're backing off. So that's what I would have to say is he would have to literally do what we're watching the Democrats do and openly embrace and platform these godless ideologies. It's one thing to soften, which I think is horrible, but it's another to outright platform and do like Biden said, oh, trans rights are the human rights of our generation. There's a difference there, whether
Yeah,
we
'cause
like to
it's
admit
like
it or not.
yeah, because for me, it's like it's thinking of like in terms of like, okay, here's the line where more or less once it's crossed, a Christian is now sinning
Mhm.
by voting, and then if you're away from the line, then a Christian's not sinning. I kind of think in those terms to where it's like, whatever I'm doing and stuff, am I doing this and am I not sinning against God?
Yeah.
Or where is that line to where it crosses that point to where it has now gone into sin? And then,
And that's why I say, right, our choices are between the two candidates,
mhm,
right? That's really it. So which is
Yeah.
better out of those two? Which one's going to govern better?
sure,
Uh,
sure.
And
Yeah.
I agree with Chris. I mean, that was going to be my answer as well. He'd have to basically be promoting the Democrat platform. Do I have hope that we as Christians could, and not just Christians, conservatives, really rise up a third party or radically change the Republican Party? You're seeing that. You're seeing a lot of the rhinos, the Republicans in name only, they're starting to get out of the party. You're starting to see where in these primaries, the genuine conservatives are winning the primaries. And so I have hope that the party's going to turn around. But, when I remember talking with Mark Dever, once we had a conference at my seminary, he and I were sitting down and he talked to me about how they went about their plan to basically take the Southern Baptist Convention, which was going liberal, and bring back a conservative, resurgence. They had a 20-year plan. They knew it would take 20 years. And they knew it was going to be a long, hard 20-year fight. I mean, it's mind-boggling that that it's those very people that have now kind of given up the fight and just gone with the cause of liberalism, but within that organization. But we need to have that same, as conservatives of this country, we need to have that same view. We need to say we got to have genuine conservatives. And I'm saying this as saying Trump is not a genuine conservative.
Mhm.
That's why I wanted DeSantis. We need genuine conservatives.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps.
And let me just say
Yeah.
one thing, Andrew. That right there, what you just said, the whole 20-year plan thing, is one of the things we as Christians have zero foresight on. When we hear things like abolitionism and other issues, I swear one of the things that drives me absolutely bananas is that somehow we as Christians can make things change overnight. We do this to ourselves regularly, and now conservatives across the board have done this. We are terrible about, oh, we voted for Trump, everything's going to be hunky dory. Well, look what happened 4 years later. It wasn't so hunky dory. The idea of that we can change things overnight by supporting the right candidate is one of the most, and I'm sorry, y'all gonna get mad at me, I don't care, is one of the most foolish and nonsensical ideas that I've ever seen. What have we ever accomplished overnight? What thing in your life have you ever done that you accomplished overnight? Nothing. It takes time and discipline to change anything. That is what it takes. And if we are so foolish as to think, oh, we'll vote for this one candidate and that's going to solve everything, we deserve what we get. End of story. That's got to stop right now. You know that your whole life is a walk of sanctification where you are constantly being disciplined and changed. Why would you think you can take something that is godless and change it overnight because you got the right candidate? We need to stop being foolish people, and we need to start thinking generationally. And we need to start preparing not only the Christians today, but preparing families for the future, how to think and act and do so biblically.
Well, look,
We need to stop this foolish concept that we can change things overnight. It's got to stop.
This is the left thinks generationally. Okay.
We don't.
John Dewey had the plan for what we're seeing today.
Mhm.
He had the plan.
Oh, absolutely.
And he knew he was not going to live long enough to see it fulfilled. Okay. So the left thinks generationally, they think about how to make these changes over long periods of time, and they just get more people in the fight. Now, let me bring up a question that Tom has. Tom is from the Even If None podcast, so you could check them out. Tom Shepard. He says, Andrew, here's my question: what would Christ do? Would Christ vote for Trump? Okay, so I think now people are gonna get upset with me now, but I think yeah, because God's will is only two candidates right now. Now, I'm saying that in the sense of Christ knows all things, and so it's a little different. Christ voting because he knows people's hearts, he knows his will. He's God, he knows what his will is. So, but that aside, it's always easy to say what would Christ do, but we're not Christ, right? Christ will tell a rich man, give up all your riches and you'll go to heaven. Is that how we get to heaven? No, it's not. But he could say that because he knows the man's heart. So I'm saying that to say, I think God's will is right now in this election, it's one of only two candidates.
Well, and here's an alternative question to Even If None. Okay, what would Christ do? You ask us as if, and I don't know, maybe are you playing it as a gotcha question?
No. He said earlier, and I don't think I started, but here I'll put it up. He said, Tom says, I would hold to abolition of abortion, and for that reason, I cannot vote for Trump. That being said, I would not demand that you, as an incrementalist, that you have to vote my way.
Okay, cool. Thank you for I did not see that, so thank you for putting that up there. So here's my thing. Whenever I see a question like that presented, it's almost as if and it doesn't seem like he's doing this, but it's often presented as, well, what would Jesus do? So if Jesus wouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that. How do you know that? Okay, you're doing the same thing that we're doing. You're looking to Scripture. You're attempting to take where Christ never spoke of voting because there was no voting at that time. There was no reason to apply that in that age. So we have to draw from Scripture and apply in our age how we would move forward. And so my argument, it just simply goes back to the way I'm going to know how to vote is knowing what God's will is for his people, which is to know that how we should live, what he commands of us, knows what that which is sinful, that which is not. And then every Christian must be convinced in his own mind how then he should apply that in something that is neither commanded nor forbidden, which is voting. And now we're all gonna vote that way because we don't have a command from Christ, thou shalt not vote for X candidate. We therefore must apply Scripture, and every Christian is going to find a reasonable realm in which to apply that. So for you, sir, you're going to say, as an abolitionist, I can't. Cool. I think that's fantastic. You're informed biblically by your conscience, and you're taking that and applying it, and you're making an argument as to how that might be, and you're not binding someone else's conscience. So I think that's fantastic. I applaud you for doing so. But let's be careful about taking a question like that as if we can kind of know exactly what Christ would have done, because we can't. There was no voting. He didn't vote. He didn't talk to vote about voting. So how are we then going to determine that? We're going to take it from his teachings. We're going to take it from Scripture. We're going to apply it in a modern day context, and we're going to go, this is kind of the acceptable realm, because we can't go over here. We can't go to the to the other side and vote for the people who are promoting sin. So to this side, where do we apply that? And that would be my argument. So I would simply caution you with that question, because guess what? Neither you nor I nor Andrew can know exactly how Christ would have voted, because there was no voting and he didn't vote.
Yeah,
nor did he command it.
You're voting, right? So let me deal with some comments here, and then we'll get to the main topic we were going. So Humble Clay says, "Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's." Okay. So that's now Humble Clay said this, which is right to your point. The Republicans have a 4-year plan. The Democrats have a 50-year plan.
He's much more generous than I am. They don't have a 4-year plan. They just have a vote the next election plan.
FDR said he wanted to get the Democrat control for 50 years, and he almost got it. They had control for 40 years.
Yeah.
But I think this one was really good, and I can relate to this. Amy says, literally every paper I wrote in college happened overnight. Just saying. To your point that nothing happens overnight. Well,
okay, but to be fair, I did do some of those, and only by God's grace did I get a good grade.
Yeah. Well, Brad, I hope we answered your questions.
Yeah, you guys did a great job. Yeah, thanks so much for the conversation and your all's input. It was really helpful, and I appreciate you guys taking time to answer my questions.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Happy to.
You're welcome anytime. That's what this show is for people to come in, ask questions, and we answer them. So thanks for coming in. I'll put you backstage. If you have more questions, just come on in. Just let us know in the private chat, okay? Oop, I think I cut him off and he was saying sounds good. Sorry. All right. So Chris, I actually did have that. I had a business law class, and I got an A in the in the class, and I got along well with the professor. And so when I took business law 2 with the same professor, he asked me, he goes, he was trying to just judge, like, how much homework he gave. And so he asked me, he says, you were one of the better students. How much time did you spend in class, like outside of class studying? And I went, maybe 5 hours. He went, no, I'm not saying for like the final. I'm saying for everything. I said, yeah, like 5 hours. And he was like, there's no way you're doing business law 2 and only doing 5 hours. I said, are you challenging me? So we had a 20-page paper that we knew had to be due at the end of the semester. I did not study for a single test. I refused. I didn't do anything outside of it. I waited and saved all 5 hours for that. And literally, I typed it as I just just typed it as I went and handed it in and wrote on there. I spent 5 hours on this paper. I have spent 0 time outside of class on anything else. He gave me an A-, and he told me afterwards, I saw him outside of school, and he goes, you deserved an A, but you wrote that on your exam. I was not giving you an A.
I like that, man. I tell you right now, you want to know what terrifies me? The idea of going back to writing papers, because in exactly 1 week, I am interviewing to enter a distance learning seminary program that my church is part of. And the idea of writing papers scares me to death because I have not done so in nearly 30 years.
Yeah. So let me say this, because I want to get to some of the things of the assassination attempt. And I realize that we've gone long, and I know that, for some, Chris just got off work and he'd probably need to just get a little bit of jolt to stay awake, though he doesn't like good coffee. But he could, if he needed to stay awake, go to Squirrely Joe's Coffee and get himself a nice cup of Joe. They are one of the sponsors here. I just put in my order. When I order, I just get one of each flavor because I can't figure out yet which flavors I like more. So I just don't do the decaf. But I'm right now drinking a cup of kindness. That is what I have on blend today. I love the names of them, kindness, compassion. So I can say I'm having a cup of kindness today.
I will say, despite me not drinking coffee, I ordered some for my wife, and she really did enjoy a lot of the ones that we purchased. So I can at least give that endorsement. My wife likes it.
Yeah. And the problem I have is I try to go to my bride and I go, I have a cup of kindness today. And she goes, it's not helping. You need more. Right.
I love your wife.
So if you want to get yourself a good cup of kindness or compassion or integrity, go to strivingforeternity.org/coffee. And not only are you getting a great cup of coffee, great freshly roasted beans or ground if you want that. They have 5-pound bags for your church, but you're also supporting a fellow brother in Christ. So very important that we're as we're talking here. Hey, why support? You want to go support some conservative coffee company, or that's better than a liberal coffee company, well, let's support one that's a conservative Christian coffee company. So Squirrely Joe's Coffee. And remember, if you use the promo code SFE, you get 20% off on your first purchase. And do go to strivingfraternity.org/coffee on your reorders. That way they continue to know that you heard about them from us. After a good cup of coffee, though, Chris likes to put his head down on a nice MyPillow, I'm sure. And so if you want to get them, they're one of our other sponsors. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code SFE. Right now, they are having their biggest sale I've ever seen. Their $25 extravaganza. You can get their original MyPillow for $25. You can get I think they're doing their 2.0 pillows, which are really cool because I don't know what they do, but it works with basically reducing the heat. If you have some people that run hot and sweat at night, or you have couples where, one likes one temperature, one likes the other. I got their mattress topper, which helps tremendously with that in keeping the temperature the same for my bride and I. So I love that. So go to mypillow.com, use promo code SFE to get those. Now, there was a comment, Chris, that I saw here that as we're talking, and Arn says, Vail, Arizona in 2 weeks is going to be interesting. I promise to be beyond polite. And some may be saying, well, but what is he talking about with Vail, Arizona? I'm glad you asked that question, Chris. And here is the answer. We are going to be having in 2 weeks, if you have not registered for this, the Christian Responsibility in an Unchristian World. This is in Vail, Arizona at Vail Valley Baptist Church, August 8th to the 10th in 2024. Now, I know a lot of folks are going like, well, I don't recognize any of these names, so I'm not going to go. I know each of the individuals personally. I know each of them are tremendous speakers in their own right and will have something to offer that you can learn from. The topics on this, and you can go to the QR code there. You can go to strivingfraternity.org, and you'll see in the banner we have the link to the conference, gives all the details. But the reality is this conference will have something for everyone. There is going to be a lot of challenging messages at this conference. So I want to encourage you to go and check that out. And so I guess I will be seeing him or her in Arizona, and we'll have some good, I guess, discussions. All right. With that, and I'm trying to at the same time go through the 60 some comments that that came up in that. And it is interesting. This must be a topic that people are interested in. People must be sharing it online, because I see we're having more viewers than we typically do. We're almost breaking 200, which we get a couple thousand in the podcast that listen, but usually the live stream is not that many. But let's talk about the assassination. Let me first go over some things. I want to put up an article and present an article so we could just look at, if I could just find my screen to share. I think it's this one. Yes. All right. So let's look at this. This is an article from Epoch Times, but people have seen this picture before. Just want to point out some of the things here. So, the shot. Here's where the Secret Service were on the roof. Here's where Trump was speaking. Here over is where the shooter was. From the shooter's location to Trump, they have estimated about 430 feet. Okay. So first off, for the people who want to say, oh, this is a government run thing. Chris, I know you have some background in police and military. For like the military, with a rifle, would a 430-foot shot be a difficult shot, do you think?
Not even close to being difficult.
Yeah. When I was doing training with the Army, we would train at about 1,000 feet. Mm-hmm. So I shot marksman, which meant, I could get most in the target. I think if I remember correctly, marksman back then was out of 30 shots, only 6 could be outside of a bullseye at 1,000 feet. So you could do that with the wind, with all the other things. That's someone that's trained. Okay. So, Secret Service shooting back about the same distance, they need 1 shot. Okay. Their shot was difficult because, as you can see, where they're positioned, there are some trees that are blocking. So a lot of people think this was a big conspiracy. A lot of people think that this was the government, FBI was behind this whole thing. They were looking to eliminate Trump. Okay, so let's just deal with facts. Have the Democrats been doing everything they can to get rid of Trump? They've tried to get him off the ballots, so he couldn't even be on the ballots. They've are creating different lawsuits against him, and as we've seen, some of these lawsuits are being brought up illegally. Right? You have the prosecutor who can't even legally be the prosecutor. So, Jack Smith is all the cases with him are now gone. They have to be gone. You have, a woman who's, basically says, oh, well, I'm going to give this case to my boyfriend. The judge goes, no, you can't do that. So there you have in New York where a judge just says, okay, I'm going to be the one to make up the way that I think your property should have been estimated, not the experts, and I'm going to try to bankrupt him. You have a president in Joe Biden who is calling for a target to be, bullseye to be put on Trump. That was 5 days before the assassination attempt that Biden said that. I don't know what was in the rest of Joe Biden's ads, but after the assassination attempt, he pulled all his ads for the week. They announced they were going to pull all their ads. So I think there was a lot more of language of assassination type language that they realized would really be bad. Now they came out and Joe Biden said, we can't have this. This is bad. We have to.
Took him a long time to say that, by the way.
Yeah. We can't have violent rhetoric, but he's already gone back to it. He's said that Donald Trump is a clear and present danger. They're all saying that if Trump wins, democracy is over. All of this language is being believed by people. Okay. And so Trump did, some facts. Yes, Trump's team did ask for extra Secret Service protection. It was denied. On the day in question, Secret Service detail for Trump, there's different types of detail. All right. There's a team that comes before and does prep work. There's teams that are there on site. So there's different teams, but the one team that Trump had was 3 people because Joe Biden's wife, who's not president, not running for president, was given 12 people. Okay. So, and I know I saw a comment someone had about the slanted roof. Just throw that out. Okay. What I think the slanted roof argument is that this was something where they were protecting themselves. Mm-hmm. Okay. This happens. Okay. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is not so much that it's some big conspiracy. I think a lot of what we're seeing is we're seeing people who are trying to. There was a screw up, and they're covering their butts. Okay, it's just this is not some big conspiracy. All right, so the facts. Yes, the shooter. He was not some. If this was a government agency doing it, they would not have some 20-year-old kid who doesn't know how to shoot. It's his father bought him the gun. His father supposedly called and warned local police. And one of the things you have to understand is Secret Service at events like this work a lot with local police. So you have a lot of different groups working together. Now, Secret Service sees a guy on the roof with a gun. That's been established. But here's a question. Do they know if that's police or not? Hard to tell. Are they just going to take a shot? Could it be in the day and age we are now of after Black Lives Matter, where police get, they could go to jail because of one mistake they make? Okay. Are they going to take that shot without knowing? They saw him up there. They lost sight of him. They were trying to find him. There are certain things that we end up seeing. One, there were people in the location over there by where the trees are that was not part of the grounds. Remember, these buildings and that parking lot you see, that is not part of the protected area. Okay, that's outside of protect. Now, does it mean that the details, the pre-detail folks should have been evaluating this? Yes, and that's something I would like to know. I would like to see the papers. Well, I won't anymore, but I think it should be declassified so we can see this. Well, I mean, after the event, this is no longer classified. Okay, this is not something. Now that it's over, some of these details are and the plan is not classified anymore. So what I would like to know is, did Secret Service communicate with local police that this is a area that needs to be protected? Okay. There's going to be question there. I think that as we look at this, there were people who told local police that were just there are people that were just there having a party. They were going to listen to Trump's speech from the distance. They saw a guy up and said he had a gun. Many people who were pointed that out. Many people who had seen this and said, well, this is something that, they knew. The FBI director has said that the gunman, and I choose not to use his name, but the gunman was flying a drone near the stage hours before the Trump shooting. That should have been a concern to Secret Service. That should have been a concern to the police. I understand. But I also understand that there's, first off, we have not had an assassination attempt since Reagan. I think that what that does is cause people to just get slacked. Like, this isn't going to happen. Did you want to say something, Chris?
No, I have some thoughts, but I was just waiting for you to finish up.
So I think that one of the things we have to recognize is that there are countless times where you have failure, but we don't know it, because to get catastrophic failure, there's so many things that have to go wrong. So many little things, right? This wasn't as much of a catastrophe as it could have been, because Trump turned his head just at the right moment. The fact that there was a police officer who, and if you see the pictures, some of the pictures show a ladder and they say this guy went up the ladder. He did not go up the ladder. The ladder was put there afterwards by those investigating the scene. Okay, so that they could get up there easier. The ladder was not used by him. And so we know he was using a rangefinder. He was also using the rangefinder and stuff like that. I'm going to say something that people may think differently about. Fine. I don't know, and we never will know, if his intent was to kill Trump. Where he initially was, it seems like he wouldn't have had a good shot at Trump, a good angle. He was seen with the gun, and he was then scrambled up to the roof. I don't know that the roof was his actual intended place. He may have just looked to do lots of fire. Okay. There were explosives found in his car. Did he plan to cause, what was his plan? We don't know yet. And we may not know. And so when we think of all the things that have to go, well, because he was seen, he scrambles up to the roof. They couldn't find him. Okay. They weren't looking on the roof. Secret Service sees him, but they lose sight of him. He's scrambling around. He is, are there plenty of things after the fact that we look at and say, oh, but this could have been caught. That should have been caught. Do you realize that in events like this, there's like lots of things that could have happened? Like here, the thing was that a police officer went up on the roof and saw him, and that is when he started shooting. There's probably the probability he didn't have a great view of Trump, or wasn't, we don't know how well equipped he was with a rifle. There was claims he had a rifle training in high school. The school denies that. Could they be protecting themselves? Sure. But the thing is that at 430 feet, a good person, someone that knows how to use a rifle is going to be able to get a shot out. He got 3 shots. Okay. The shots that he did were right as the police officer went up on the roof. From the police officer, he went up, saw the guy, and came down because the guy pointed the gun at him. Now, some people are criticizing the officer. Why didn't the officer? That's not his training. He should go, just go for it. Well, if only his head is sticking up, that's the one part of his body that isn't protected. Right? Chris, you would know this. You're wearing a vest that protects your body, not your head. They probably they weren't having headgear. So the fact is, I could understand why his first reaction could be to drop down and realize he's got to get a different angle. And it's right after that the 3 shots went off. So this guy probably didn't aim so well. Trump happens to turn. The guy went at a shot for the head. Again, a trained... Okay, we know that Trump was wearing a vest. We know that after the fact. And that did supposedly protect one of the bullets. But the reality is what we end up seeing is that there was definitely a case where this guy got off 3 quick shots. Secret Service, 1 shot. Now, I know that in Newsweek this week, they're trying to say Donald Trump may not have been hit by a bullet, the FBI director says. Well, his doctor who examined him said different, okay? So I get all the talk, okay? I get that it sure looks like it looks like it was a conspiracy, and I get it. Okay. But we have to take a look at things and just go, I believe what we saw was someone who maybe, wow, we just hit 200. Cool. Thanks for those who are sharing this. Having a lot of folks live, but maybe it's just we're saying controversial things.
Yeah, that's probably part of it.
I think that part of what, I don't take a knee-jerk reaction to go, oh, it's a conspiracy. The government was in on it, okay? And it's not just because I used to work for the government that I'm going to defend them, but it's because I worked for the government that I know that there is incompetence that can occur, okay? And there could be gross incompetence. I also understand something about the way agencies work that, quite frankly, it's protect your own. It's this notion of if I allow there to be any sign of a chink in the armor, then people have no trust in us. And that's actually the cause of the problem. I've talked about this as well with pastors. There's a book called Superman Syndrome for pastors, where it's like they feel like they can't show any weakness because then people will say they're disqualified. And in that, what they actually do is disqualify themselves because they try to cover up their sin. Okay. And so I think that we have to be careful with that. So I think that this kid, and they say he was a registered Republican, okay, but he was also used by one of the most leftist progressive Democrat get out campaign vote organizations. He not only supported them financially, but was in a commercial for them. So he was someone who is definitely a leftist. Do leftists register Republican? Yeah, there are times that they register Republican because they want to vote against the Republican incumbent. That's actually a thing that Democrats encourage to do. Okay. And so, the reality is, were there enough warning signs? Yes, I agree there were enough warning signs. Whether his intention was to shoot people attending there or to shoot Trump, I don't know. Now, will the left use this? Of course they will, because now what are they saying? The one thing that Trump has so many rallies that are so big, they have to be held outdoors. We can't protect you if you're going to be outdoors. So they're basically saying they're going to give up. Now, they have said, and this is, people are saying, they're only giving him protection now. Well, actually, there is a thing now where they give more protection once he is the candidate. And once at the RNC, he accepted the nomination. He was the candidate. So he does get more protection at that point. As a previous president and as a candidate, he should have. Now, one of the things I will admit is that what you see is Joe Biden has been trying to deny as much as he could Secret Service for Donald Trump. He's limited because Donald Trump is a former president, so he gets some. He's denied him the Secret Service. Every candidate gets a certain amount of Secret Service detail. RFK, who is a candidate, he was running as a Democrat in the primaries and was being refused any Secret Service detail. He was also, he basically, since they didn't have a primary, remember, this is the party saying they're fighting for democracy. RFK had to go as an independent because they purposely prevented him from being able to run as a Democrat. In fact, that's the reason they're trying to figure out what to do now, because of the rules they changed to get rid of RFK, they couldn't get Joe Biden or whoever on the ballot in Ohio because they missed the date. So they're trying to figure that one out. They basically have to choose a candidate before the convention, okay, to get on Ohio, because they don't want to lose those votes. Otherwise, they're going to have to tell everyone it's a write-in, or they'll just get a judge to go, this happened they'll say it's not fair. This happened in New Jersey. We had a governor who, two people running for governor. The Democrat was convicted of embezzling money from the state. He had to resign, but it was past the date of anyone else, of the Democrats putting anyone up. And a judge just said, well, that wouldn't be fair. We have to put someone up. So they just put a name in. No vote, just put the name in, and then he gets the votes. Well, that's basically what we have here. They don't want to. They're just going to put someone's name in because they want to make sure they're on the ballots in Ohio. So, all that to say, is it easy to see why people could say there's a conspiracy? Yes. Is it easy to see why people are saying, "Oh, he's faking it. He made it up. It's all a false flag"? Yes. What is the truth? I think it's in the middle. I think there was a series of, bad decisions, incompetent decisions where, quite frankly, in law enforcement today, the fact that you have so many people that play, gotcha after the fact, where they have all of these, after the fact, they question everything, and the police they have to make a split-second decision. Okay. And so, where it used to be that they would be the public and the law would side with a law enforcement if a mistake is made, it's not that way anymore with Black Lives Matter. You have someone, even if it looks like someone's got a knee on his neck, when you look at the reverse side, you realize his knee wasn't on the neck, it was on his shoulder blade, which is where it should be to keep him down. But from a different angle, the only angle we would see for the longest time, it looks like it's on the neck. Well, what happens? That guy's life is destroyed. He's in jail. His family is why? Because did he try to kill someone? No. In fact, the guy wanted to be out of the car. Here was a guy, what he actually died of is a fentanyl overdose. The police pulled him out of the car. They called EMS. EMS, which was the fire department, came to the wrong address. And it took 20 minutes to get there. And that's what ended his life. Okay? But where's that police officer? What's his family like? Their lives are destroyed because he made not even a bad decision. He followed policy. Okay? So do you think that a police officer is going to have a little bit of a nervous reaction to this stuff? Yes. That's why in that one school, they didn't rush in. And everyone's like, why didn't they rush in? Because they don't want to make the wrong decision, because everyone afterwards challenges them for what they have a split-second decision to make. Okay, so I talked a lot about law enforcement. Chris, you're in law enforcement. I know you're going to have a lot.
Used to be. I'm retired now.
Well, you still had a uniform on for work today.
Well, that's called a security guard. That's a very different thing.
That's not law enforcement. Come on.
No, goodness, no. We are civilians. I will tell you something. It's interesting going through security guard training after doing 25 years of law enforcement, because you are a civilian and you are reminded you are a civilian. And there's a lot of things they don't want you to do, even though you are security, which goes against 25 years of law enforcement experience. So it's kind of fun. All right. So let me just back things up at the beginning. Humble Clay says Captain America never retires.
There you go.
I'm not Captain America, so
you just play the part. I mean,
so let me just back this up.
Let me ask this question before you do that.
Yes,
I know I can't do a poll, but folks in the audience, just yes or no, if you'd like Chris, just a yes or no. Do you want Chris Honholz to come on next time dressed as Captain America? Just, I will. You
care what the answers are. I'm not doing it.
I think we would like to see you come in dressed as Captain America and do a show that way. But I'll let the audience decide.
They can decide all they want, but I'm the one who decides what gets put on.
YouTube, we're there. We're already starting to see. So go ahead, Chris.
So, all right. So let me just back this up a little bit. I agree with you. It is very, very easy to get caught up in. Melissa, you and I are going to have a talk. But it's very easy to start looking at the vast amount of information that comes in and start trying to be amateur Sherlock Holmes. I get it, because I made the I'm a party pooper, Deneen. I'm not doing it. Y'all gonna keep, Andrew's gonna keep throwing me off here. So I understand we all want to be amateur a detective and come in and start seeing this, because I said earlier, like when we had the Ronald Reagan attempted assassination, we had one camera and that's it. Today we have 3 billion cameras and we can see things from virtually every angle. We can hear all the testimonials of people who are posting their stuff online. There's so much we can get, and it's very easy to start wanting to put these things together for ourselves. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing in and of itself, because we all lived through COVID. We all saw that prior to COVID, most of us were probably somewhat rational when it came to conspiracy theories. And then COVID happened and we kind of lost our minds, because everybody I was going to say everybody saw the conspiracy theories actually come true. And so now we are a little, in my opinion, too quick to believe conspiracy to everything. It's not to say that there aren't conspiracies. It's not to say that we shouldn't be wise and question things. But I do believe we went way to the other side and went, every conspiracy is now true. We call everything as a conspiracy a spoiler. Guys, let's bring it back to the middle. So let me start there.
And that's what we're trying to do here tonight.
Right. So when you look at this issue, I tend to agree with Andrew. I don't believe this was a government conspiracy. I don't believe that it was an attempt by those within the Biden regime to find a way to take out Trump. Look, if they wanted to do that, there's a billion ways they could have done it that wouldn't have been this sloppy and this messed up. But at the same time, I don't have that much trust in the government to do anything successfully. We can't keep anything secret. So, especially this administration. So we're giving them a lot of credit that they aren't even deserving of. Let me just start with that. Now, this issue occurs. We know for a fact, as Andrew said, there was a young man on a roof that was seen by lots of people with a firearm who took a shot at the former president. That's undeniable fact. We know that it became a giant cluster mess once this individual was identified, and there were people up on a roof who seemed to have him in shot. And it appears, or they could have taken a shot. They're not being given the authorization to shoot. We know that it has been admitted publicly that they could have put snipers on that roof to protect him. They chose not to because of the sloped roof argument, which is hysterically stupid beyond any measure of rational thought.
When I heard that, I said that was just someone going, "How do I make an excuse for this quickly?"
Oh yeah, she pulled that out of thin air. But we've learned that they had
is in no policy document, and the proof is because
the other building had a worse slope and they had to. Yeah. So it was ridiculous. They actually had law enforcement resources inside the building, which does nobody any good. We know it is a staging area for law enforcement. So there was virtually no reason this should have happened, except for a vast failure on the part of law enforcement, Secret Service, and other resources to do the job that they should have done. And we can tell that because the things that have come out since then that have been admitted by individuals who have started to release information, things like, yes, they knew he was up there. Yes, they did not have the resources they weren't supposed to have. Yes, there were denials made, even though this former Secret Service director tried to soft shoe that answer before Congress. We know that there have been times that they were denied resources, physical resources. So the idea that it was a vast conspiracy as opposed to utter failure on the part of law enforcement, I am far more likely to believe when you have an administration or a regime, as Dr. White would call it, which has been utterly, utterly obsessed with diversity, DEI, inclusion, and absolutely not at all concerned with actual proper policy and procedure, because that is what is effective in any agency. Getting the best people for a job. No, meritocracy is terrible because it denies people who needed a chance. Except that when you are protecting any dignitary, you need the best. You need the absolute best who are utterly committed to doing the job correctly. You need to provide all the resources, and there can never, ever, ever be a time when you take those things for granted. And we know that that's what happened. There's information that has come out that some of the individuals on that protective detail may not have actually been Secret Service, but from within another agency, which seems to fit why. Look, I have a certain amount of pity for the poor gal's picture who's been displayed everywhere. Was she incompetent for the role? Yes. Might she be good at
let me address that. Let me address that, because a lot of people that talk about, the head of the Secret Service was focused on DEI and all this, and so you have that one picture of the one girl that it looks like she's hiding behind Trump.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think that was the case, but that's what it is.
That's what, and everyone uses that, and yet, go watch the video, and what you're seeing is there's a rail there. She was one of the first to jump on top. She couldn't cover him because he's much taller. I will say, Chris, the one thing I would say is she should know how to holster a weapon.
Again, this is where you
no.
want the people who are best for the job, which means they are training these scenarios and are training under pressure.
And they're training. Exactly. That's the point. Training under pressure, because the fact that, look, I'm trying to give credit like you are, right? And not just jump on things, but I'm looking at her not holstering the weapon. I think she was freaked out.
Oh yeah. There's no question. You can see it.
Yeah.
You can see that there's a certain amount of panic. She's trying to do her job, but she has
not trained under pressure.
Right. In law enforcement, we call it, getting, going to black, it's that tunnel vision where everything just focuses down to that little narrow light, and everything outside of it, you're losing it. And you can tell, even when they've moved him off site and she's standing around the car and she's moving back and forth, it's that nervous energy, that anxiousness. She doesn't know exactly what to do.
And see, this is the thing I want to say for folks. Like, it is so easy to look at that picture and draw conclusions. And because I've seen that picture with her where it looks like she's hiding, and yet when you go watch the video, she's trying to get off this. He's going down steps, and she's trying to get down faster.
Yeah,
she jumps in front.
That's my point. Is that it's when we start trying to do our amateur Sherlock Holmes, because we're seeing all this information, you guys are not going to like me for this. We don't have the training to take a million pieces of information and distill it down into a succinct narrative that helps us understand what actually happened. That's why law enforcement does what it does. I've said this before. You take a school shooting. I can't count the number of times I've heard, oh, there were 3 or 4 people and they're hiding things. No, they're not. Why do you think there's 3 or 4 people? Because multiple phone calls come in. The guy's approached the school. He's got a hoodie on. He's got a backpack. He's got a rifle. Gets into the school. Oh, there's a guy with a ball cap on and he's got a shotgun. Gets down the hall further. Oh, now he's the backpack's gone. He's got a pistol. Everybody goes, well, that's 3 or 4 different shooters. No, that's one person shedding things as he goes, and you're getting pieces of information. And when you put an actual investigation together, which includes finding the pieces of clothing, finding the backpack, finding the discarded firearms or the shell casings, and you follow the path, you understand that it was one person. But all of us who are taking a billion pieces of data and trying to distill it into something, we begin to think we've unraveled a conspiracy. So I want to caution people, because it's easy to think you're Sherlock Holmes when in reality you're coming out like Inspector Clouseau. Okay. I'm not trying to be mean. You guys need to think about this. You are putting together what you see online and you think you've uncovered something. And a lot of this is because of what happened, I believe, with COVID. We now believe everything is a conspiracy because conspiracies were revealed to be true. And now we think anything that that the government has said A, it must be B. And that is literally a post that I see. If the government has said it, believe the opposite. While I tend to believe there is reason for that, not everything that done that way is the case. Now, going back to what actually, oh, I like this from Melissa. Wait, you mean we need to use simple logic when assessing things? LOL. Shocking but true, Melissa. You're back on my friend list now. So the simple Inspector Gadget solved 100% of his crimes.
Yes.
Inspector Gadget never solved anything. Penny and Brain sure solved them all, though. Oh man, I just dated myself on that one. And there's like a bunch of our listeners have no clue what we just said.
All right. I have no clue what you just said.
Well, you don't know most anything involving pop culture, so big shock there. All right. So with that being said, looking at everything that happened, we have a DEI run agency. We have a lack of resources, a lack of sufficient communication, and clearly a very poor job securing not only the event, but areas outside the event. Because if you have someone who is a former president running for office, who is known to be a contentious individual who makes people very, very angry, you're going to secure every position possible to ensure he is not taken out, whether you like him or not. The problem is when you have people who have not been properly trained, who have been put in their positions simply because they fill the quota, as Daryl Harrison would call it, the intersectionality Olympics, and you fill that quota, and you're put in those positions. And when the people running this have nothing but disdain for you, do you think you're going to get the best of the best to protect you? The answer is absolutely not. And that, I believe, is literally what happened. Do I understand? Do I understand, as you do, Andrew, the desire to see this as something conspiratorial and to apply to the Biden regime nefarious intentions to have the man killed? Yeah, I totally get it. And do I believe that his regime and the people under him are responsible for what happened? Indirectly, yes, because they failed to do their job. They did not do the things that they should have done. There are things, critical thinking died a horrible death. Yeah. And sadly, this is going to get me in trouble too. That is a very big problem, even within the Christian church.
Yes.
You can tell you guys that, but it is sadly true. So are they indirectly responsible? Absolutely. Do we then get to just kind of fly off the handle and try to determine it for ourselves? Look, I would say, be wise. Don't accept everything hand given to you by this administration as biblical truth, because we know they're going to lie. And as you said, Andrew, cover up things to protect themselves. Absolutely, we're going to. But can we at least do a little bit of common sense analysis and go, this was a utter failure on the part of this administration and this agency to do the job that they should have done? Yes. They absolutely failed in their job. Should Cheadle have immediately stepped down? Yes. Did she do so? No. It took bipartisan butt chewing to scare her out of that position.
No, I think it took the fact, when AOC,
when I can agree with AOC on anything,
agreeing with Republicans, you're not getting supported, right?
No, she knew she was about to have her hat handed to her,
and the reality is,
way out and she ran.
Christopher Wray, he's next, right?
Oh yeah,
and so it's like, hey, rather push her out than she becomes a scapegoat. And so, yeah, I'll let you finish any other point.
And so basically, just to kind of to sum up what I'm saying is, as Christians, we have a responsibility to truth. Okay, is it true that there was an assassination attempt on a former president? Absolutely. Is it true that that a young man attempted to do this and was shot and killed, and that by God's grace that former president is alive today? Yes, it is true. Is it true that those things, at a bare minimum, are an indirect result of a failure on the part of this agency to do its job and those associated with it? Also true. So we know those things. We can look at that and go, yes, we know these things to be true. Now, what do we not know? All the things connected to that we don't have privy to, all the things that we the analysis, the crime scene investigation information, the tracking of all the data, they're giving us what they can release to us and what they have chosen to release to us. And that's all we're going to have. Is that sufficient evidence for any of us? Can we suspect? Can we say, I kind of wonder? Look, I look at it and go, man, there's something not right about all this. There's just something not right. Can I look at that and make that decision for myself? Yeah. Can I go out and then, as a Christian, declare with some sort of certainty, some sort of proof, this was an inside job, they were trying to kill him, it's a conspiracy for XYZ? No, I can't. I can't do that, because I have a commitment to truth. And I'm not going to defend the Secret Service. I'm not going to defend their failures. I'm going to say what they did was wrong. And it is a shame. Then they should be ashamed of their failures to do so. But I'm also going to say, no, I'm not going to go out and declare this was a absolutely proof positive Biden regime attempt to kill him, because I don't have that evidence. I just don't. I think we have sufficient evidence to say that this young man, disturbed as he was, tried to kill, former President Trump, and he wanted that done so everybody could see it. And the thing that scares me more than anything are the people who publicly are mad that he failed. Yeah, that bothers me even more.
My fear is that this is not going to be the only attempt now.
No, it's not. The sad part about these type of events is that they do inspire others.
Correct.
We see that all the time, and that is scary.
And let me say this, Chris said this, but I want you to hear this again because it's important. Whenever we come to things like this, where you have investigations like this, Chris would know it from the law enforcement side. I'll know it from a different side. That there is information that will be either held back for purpose of investigation or classified, and therefore you can't give the information. Right? There's certain information, where we're in a position I used to have where I would not be able legally to share with someone. If you ask me a direct question, I would have to say I cannot confirm or deny. That's the answer. I can't, I'd have to be told I have to come up with cover stories, things like that. The reality is, when you have investigations like this specifically, we're dealing with, there could be classified material. There's an investigation going on. Not everything is going to be open to the public. I mean, this is one of the things I always go back to I remember under the Bush administration, people were like criticizing Bush because, he what was his, he wouldn't give a clear purpose for why we went to, Iran or Iraq and, things like that. Okay. Well, now that has been declassified. All right. So the reason he went to Iraq and targeted Iraq was because he said, how do you get a whole bunch of terrorists that hide in caves to come out of the caves? And that was what the purpose of going after Iraq was, to get all the terrorists to come to one place. And so that was working until some guy on CNN International, they never aired it on CNN America, by the way, but it was for international audience where people in Iraq and, Al Jazeera got wind of it and announced that was the purpose. And that very day was when all of a sudden the terrorists stopped coming out of their holes and coming to fight with Iraq. They ended up kidnapping Americans and beheading them. They changed the way they worked. Now, could Bush come out and say, this is our game plan? No, because it would never have worked. It was classified. Okay? So I want you to remember that when you're making decisions and you're trying to sit here and go, well, this is a big conspiracy, because this, that, a lot of times they cannot answer. The agencies will not be able to answer. And, I put a comment that I read from Humble Clay, and he said this jokingly, I get, but he says, the FBI would never mislead or lie. Well, they have to sometimes. I mean, especially the CIA. The reality is that is actually part of their job, is to do covert operations. And so, there's also a part where, as I said earlier, they want to protect the agency. So that comes into play. Let me rip through some of the comments that I have starred that may still be. I start a bunch of things, but I don't know if any of them are still valid. Let's see. Amy says, Andrew always says things I've never heard before. Well, words are hard. That earlier on. Okay, so this
you should see some of his text messages.
Yeah. KT is saying the guy looked up the distance Lee Oswald from Kennedy. I'm not 100% sure on that. I will admit it is very strange that this guy has no media presence at all. Did he remove it knowing what he was going to do, knowing that everyone looks at that? I will say that a couple things concern me the most with this. Okay, here, and this, again, you may not have heard anywhere else, but two things that concern me. One, the FBI was able to get his phone. He had two phones, one on the scene and one at home. And within hours, they were able to break into the phone. Okay, why am I so concerned with that? So there was a few months ago a hack that was discovered in Apple's phone, in Apple's iOS software. Someone noticed something, reverse engineered it, and basically discovered that this was a vulnerability that would give people access to anyone's phone that was super well protected. There were a bunch of things to protect it so no one could use it, which leads many of us in the industry, to do cybersecurity, to wonder if this was, and we know this happens, that agencies force companies to give them backdoors. Was that what happened? Because as soon as it was found, that was shut down. I want to know how. There's a couple things I really want to know in this whole thing. One, I want to know, in this case, I would like to know how they knew, how they got into this guy's phone so quickly. Okay. I have my suspicion, but that's a concern that they were able to get in so quickly. One of the major questions that I would have if I was able to ask the questions, why in the world was Trump on the X? In other words, they knew 20 minutes before Trump went out there that there was a issue. They should have held him back. That is very common. When you see these politicians and they're late, a lot of times it's because they're checking something out before the person goes out. So why was he on the X? Why was he there? Why was he given the go-ahead? And he even brought that up. He even addressed this to say, why was I allowed to go out when they knew that? That is a valid concern. But the fact that they were able to access this man's phone is a concern. That tells you that it tells me that our government has ready access to our privacy. Now, in this case, fine. Did they go through warrants and things like that? I would hope so, but it was done pretty quickly. Another thing that greatly concerned me is that they admitted that they were able to use facial recognition and the serial number on the weapon. From the serial number on the weapon, they were able to track down exactly where that weapon was purchased. They found out that it was purchased from his father, from a store that's closed. Now, if you have an FFL, if you're not familiar with these things, an FFL would have to keep their records. It is illegal for the federal government to keep a registry of gun owners. But one of the things the Biden administration was doing was they had this like zero tolerance policy with FFLs, and they were shutting down FFLs one after another. And what happens when an FFL shuts down? What do you do with all those records? The government would take them and they would store them. Has that become a gun registry, which would be illegal? Well, they were able to, within a day, find a lot of information about that gun from the serial number. They used facial recognition to figure out his name since he had no ID on him. There's a lot of privacy issues that this is unveiling that I have great concerns with. My number one concern with the whole assassination attempt is, why was Trump allowed to go out? He should never have been allowed. And that is the one question I think they should have asked at Congress.
Yeah.
Okay? Because that is the most important question. Out of all the questions that we've raised tonight, I think that's the number one. The concerns that have now come out of this, I have a great concern with privacy issues. I look, folks, think about the Holocaust. I guess wrapping up on a bad note, maybe not the best, but I'll say this, and we'll give some other announcements. But the thing is, I just get to Brother John here quickly. Question, what are your thoughts on Bible codes? They're kooky. Okay, moving on. I read the book that talks about all the Bible codes, and they always look at things in the past, and it's just people making things up.
Yeah.
Okay. So The thing is that I have great concerns with privacy issues. I think that when we look at what happened in Nazi Germany, and you look at the supernatural evil that occurred there, is what you end up seeing is, if you haven't studied that, what the Germans did is they knew when they were going to go in and take the Jewish people out of the ghettos where they put them and move them into concentration camps, they put men in the sewage system 3 days prior to sit there in the sewage, in the sewers with food so that they would survive for 3 days, because they knew what people would do to try to help, get out of being taken. What they would do is they'd go through the homes, and as people would march off, they would leave a soldier in the different homes. And as they took everyone to the concentration camps, you heard shots going off all night. What were the shots? It was as people finally said, okay, it's been quiet enough, the coast is clear, and they'd come out of wherever they were hiding that the Germans couldn't find them, not realizing that they've staged Germans in the house to just sit and wait all night, waiting for people to come out. When you look at this and see this kind of supernatural evil that can occur within now a government that has a way of spying on us in ways we can't even fathom. The fact that the government has access to the facial recognition, the fact they can get all to your cell phone. Just think about how much is on your cell phone. People are completely and utterly unaware of how much information they put out there that puts them at risk without realizing it. And maybe one day we'll do a show on this, and I'll go through things on cybersecurity and how we can track bad guys using things that are posted. Okay. People put out way too much. So the fact that they can get to a phone is concerning. I had a guy who once told me that he believes in conspiracies, and he was like, "Oh, the government's going to come after us one day." Well, okay. I've been saying that for a long time here, that we'll have another Holocaust. It just won't be the Jewish people. Well, now it might be the Jewish people and the Christians. I've said it'll be the Christians. And so we got someone who's new to the audience. The lamb is the light.
Yeah, the lamb is the light.
The lamb is the light. Got it. Okay. Says that's exactly why I don't put anything past the government. Exactly. Yeah, we have to realize that what they get in power with, they stay in power with. Go back to the first hour of the show. And, if they get in power by saying Christians are to blame for everything, they will go after Christians. And they have to, because they lose their power if they don't keep it going. And so, look, here's the thing that I see very scary. This guy that I was saying believes in conspiracies. He said, "There's nothing you could say to shock me." I said, "I'm sure there is." And so I shocked him. Okay. So let me tell you what I shocked him with. And so you could realize, because I think this information I'm giving you is fine in the hands of people that have no ill intent of others. But one of the things we've learned with laying fiber optics around the country is fiber optics are so sensitive, you can tell the make and model of a car on a highway from miles away. You can tell exactly how many people are walking in the woods. So where in Nazi Germany, many people hid in the woods and hid there because no one found them. You put that with fiber optics laid all across underground, and you'll be able to figure out exactly where people are in the woods. Where are they supposed to be there? Where are they now? Oh, we could send people right in there. You take things like that, something that was discovered by accident could be used for evil in a regime that would be like the Nazis, where they get into power because their only concern is power, and to hold on to that power, they have to go after people. And that can be a dangerous thing in our day and age with the technology we have. So I'm very concerned with it. Matthew said much earlier, and he said the word will before this, but will there need to be another civil war before we see abolition? I think that the reality is we won't see, I don't think we'll see a civil war. I think we would see a secession of the states. I think if the Democrats steal the next election, you're going to see a bunch of red states that are just going to go, we succeed. We're done with you. We're going to be your own country. Hey, you keep all your debt, keep all the illegal immigrants you want, but we're done. Humble Clay had said this about DEI. We mentioned that earlier. He says DEI stands for Democrat Enforced Ignorance. No, I'm sorry. That is incorrect. It stands for Didn't Earn It. That's what it stands for. And CRT, by the way,
two things can be true at the same time.
CRT does not stand. Let me correct that for folks. It doesn't. CRT, we hear of it and we think it stands for critical race theory. It actually stands for cultural racism training, because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Humble Clay got this right earlier. Is what we need is a real revival. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want to close with is the fact that as we talk about these things, people could be like, oh, it's such a downer. We need to be, as Christians, sharing the gospel with people, that people get saved. Trust me, the politicians will pretend. Okay? They will pretend. Lamb as the Light says, maybe JFK murder would have been different had everyone had a camera. Yeah, that would have been, because all the cameras were seized and people willingly gave up their camera and film. And the government has it. Was the government behind JFK's assassination? I'll just give you my opinion. Yeah. So I think it was the CIA. My opinion. You want to get more? I'll actually give you a podcast. Let me look it up really quickly. That had some really interesting things and some things that I a lot of it I knew. Some I was like, okay, his name. Who killed JFK? It was done. It's just you can go search on that on a podcast app. That'll be a fun one for you. Now, Matt is saying this, and I think this is right. He's saying sometimes incompetence and cumulative mistakes is just incompetence and cumulative mistakes. Possible bad collaboration and follow through and judgment calls. And that is the point that we're trying to make here. Okay. It is the fact that when we look at this stuff, we have to be careful and not jump to the conclusions. And so that's one I just got to deal with. Amy said, I think 9/11 was a conspiracy, as well as Princess Di, JFK, Marilyn Monroe for sure. Okay, so let me speak to these of which ones I can. Marilyn Monroe. For folks who don't know, there was a guy who actually was secretly recording Marilyn Monroe. He had tapes of her last night. It was not released until after his death because he was afraid to release it. Basically, he had recordings, and I heard them. His daughter released them, and then she kind of disappeared along with the tapes. But I did hear them. You have both JFK and RFK sleeping or fooling around, whatever you want to call it, with Marilyn Monroe. And just from what they were saying, it didn't sound like she was exactly enjoying herself. But something happened that night, and it did seem to involve both the brothers. Princess Di, can't speak to, don't know anything about it. 9/11, yeah, that actually was a real thing. Sorry for those that want to believe that it was just something that the Bushes did. Yep. So what I want to say with this is I want us to have some caution and recognize that when we deal with law enforcement, they cannot always give us all the information. Would you agree with that, Chris?
Absolutely. There's information that you're not going to get, pure and simple. And even when they give a briefing and they give a plethora of information, that's due to hours upon hours of investigation. You're not going to get access to all that. You're just simply not. Even when you get a police, if you were to go and do a request for a police report, you're going to have to sift through mountains of information to get anything out of it. If you were able to get access to the entire report, there's just we're not going to be the ones who are on the ground doing the investigation. I've said this before. I am a big believer in having a healthy skepticism of law enforcement, government, or any entity thereof. And what I define that as is those individuals have an immense amount of power. And so we have to be cautious of how they use and wield it. But that doesn't mean that we suspect that every single thing they do is a lie. Rather, we let things work as they are supposed to work. And if we find that they are abusing power, if it is demonstrable that they are doing so, then we need to hold them accountable for that. But that healthy skepticism recognizes that. Unhealthy skepticism, the type that says, I don't believe anything, I believe everything's a conspiracy, I believe everything is a lie, is a giving to yourself something that only God has, which is omniscience.
Yeah.
You're not omniscient.
So,
And you have to recognize your limitations. Are there failures? And are there cover-ups? Yes. But just because those things happen does not mean that every single instance that that it then comes across in front of you that looks suspicious is a lie or is a conspiracy. And I would say simply no. You have to recognize your limitations. Okay, I see you starred one. I want to address this.
I want to. Yeah, I was gonna, and let me just say, there are times when law enforcement, for good reason, has to withhold information.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially when there's an ongoing investigation, and the reason being is they may not give you certain details, and all of a sudden, so say there's a murder and it was with a very specific type of knife. They don't reveal that. Maybe they don't reveal it was with a knife. They just say it was a murder, and then someone confesses and says, well, I did it, I shot the guy. Well, they know that this guy is, because that actually does happen a lot. You get false confessions. I don't know why people want to do that, but there are people that do. Or they say they know something about it, especially if there's a reward. Well, the guy was shot. I know the guy that shot him. Well, the police can now throw that out because they know the guy wasn't shot. He was stabbed with a knife. Maybe someone knows that, I stabbed him with a knife, or I know a guy who stabbed him with a knife. What kind of knife? You see, holding that information can tell whether someone is giving valid information or not. Okay? There's even been times where people who actually do the crimes work with the police. They volunteer information to throw the police off.
We had an individual who went out here in my hometown, Fernley, Nevada, where a young woman was kidnapped, raped, and killed. He was going out helping with these searches. They do that.
That happens often. And they try to get information. So, all right. So I start two that I wanted to talk about. I'm going to put them both up, and then I'll let you talk, and then I'll respond and end. But we are over time. So the Lamb is the Light says, what about when police lie to you and threatens you with arrest if you don't comply? Also, Amy is saying law enforcement can lie, but I don't think that includes a threat of detainment. So, Mr. Law Enforcement, ex-law enforcement officer, can law enforcement lie?
Absolutely.
Investigation.
Absolutely. Yes, they can. That has actually been upheld in various court decisions.
Yes.
A law enforcement officer can, provide false information, of course, during the course of investigation, in an effort to ascertain truth. So, for example, if you have a suspect and you're interviewing them, you can say, "Oh yeah, we've had multiple calls on you, and they're all telling us that you did this." you haven't got a single call, but you're trying to pull information out of that individual, you can be dishonest with someone when you're investigating them. Everybody wants to, scream, holler, and cry, but that is a investigatory tactic. You are using, subterfuge in order to draw information out of somebody. So what is he referring to? There's a lot of different ways that can be addressed. There are times when law enforcement officers who flat out lie to protect themselves, to protect something else, to hide information, that would be maybe they're failing to get the information they need, and they haven't done a good investigation, but they lie in their report, or they lie to someone else to cover it up. Yes, that is illegal. That is what they're going to get held accountable for. And when those kind of lies come out, I'll tell you right now, if a law enforcement officer is found having lied in the course of his duties in a manner that is meant to protect or hide something that he's done, or has covered up for another officer, and that's later investigated and found to be true, that officer is useless to law enforcement, because once that it gets into his record, no DA will ever put him on the stand. They're called a Brady cop because it's called a Brady rule. And so, yeah, law enforcement officers who lie in a way that violates policy, violates practice, violates the law, then yes, no, those individuals can be held accountable. But can they lie in the course of an investigation? You're at the scene of something that's going on. They're trying to investigate, and they tell you a falsehood in order to get information out, and you're incensed. How dare that person lie to me? Hey, I'm sorry to tell you, they're allowed to do that. Now, what they threaten you with arrest if you don't comply. Okay, to what end? What are we talking about? Are you getting, I've seen individuals who believe they can get up in the middle of law enforcement officers in the course of their duties and try to interfere. Hey, get out of here or you're going to jail. That's a legitimate compliance. If they're, okay, he's giving information. So let me read this. We were protesting a drag queen show.
Which one? Okay, here it is.
We were protesting a drag queen show. He said we were on private property. Our feet were on the edge of the pavement. He said the property owner owned all the way to the middle of the road. Now, is that a lie, or is that him failing to recognize the truth? He might not be right. He might not be.
Let me give you that one. So we were doing an outreach in Wyoming, and we already knew where the property was. We already knew where they had permits. We knew it was public property. The one guy who is a retired police officer wanted us gone. When the police came over, I knowing the law, we had the lawyers. We explained, here's what the law says. This guy was trying to, say, no, they just need to be gone. I knew that. I said, listen, the law says that there has to be a written times, mean, and manner policy. Do you have that? And the guy was like, well, in the office we do. I said, well, officer, he needs to go back to the office and go get it. And when he produces that, we'll honor that. But the law is that this is public property because they have not permitted this area. And we showed the permits. We went in ahead of time to know what the law was, what the private property was, or public property, where they permitted. So we were in the legal grounds. Of course, what happened was the one officer, the retired officer shows the guy a badge, and what happens? Now it's, buddy system, and the guy goes, you got to go. Right? Now we have the choice. We could legally sit and fight it and get arrested that night and go to jail and fight it in court and then sue the officer for violating our civil liberties, because that you can do if he violates your civil liberty. I've actually done this in New Jersey with folks, and it's how we had certain rights in certain places because the police officers were threatened with jail for kicking us off of public property. So, you make that choice. We chose, it was early in the evening and we wanted to keep evangelizing. We just moved.
Yeah.
We actually moved to a better place that we wouldn't have. So God used that.
And that's where using discernment and wisdom comes into play. That officer, is he lying? Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, maybe he's ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I think he's telling the truth.
Right. And so you being able to address that, pull in a supervisor, get additional information, but also at the same time, use wisdom. Hey, maybe this, maybe the right thing to do in this case is to say, okay, we don't want to cause any further problems. Where can we go so that we can continue to do what we're supposed to do and we're not interfering? And guess what? Now you've removed yourself from being in a position of creating further drama so you can continue to do what you want to do. And guess what you can now do? You get the officer's name, you get the information, and you go and you file a complaint with the agency.
And I've done that many times.
Yeah, so there are ways to address that, but so my apologies for having to go off on a tangent that didn't relate to what you were speaking to. But that's what the problem is when we don't have that information.
But I'll say this: look, if you always realize you don't have to say anything to an officer. Okay, there's you get your lawyer. That you have that right. But let me say this: we said this earlier. What's needed here is a revival. Okay, this is what's needed. We need people who are going to go out and share the gospel. And let me just say, I mean, the gospel's really clear because I was in the gym today talking to this guy. He wants to talk. He's basically arguing that what Christianity is all about. Him being a Black American it is about revolution, love and revolution. And I'm like, that's not Christianity. Okay. And so it's interesting because he suddenly didn't want to be there when all of a sudden it's like, no, what the Bible says is that you and I break God's law. We are sinners. We're criminals in God's sight. We deserve an eternity in a lake of fire for every single lie we've ever told because God is infinitely holy. And because he is infinitely holy and infinitely just, he must punish every single sin to the fullest weight. And the reason it has such a heavy punishment is because it is an offense against God. And that is why every one of us are guilty and deserve eternity in a lake of fire. But God, I love that part. But God made a way of escape. God came to earth. Jesus became a man. He who knew no sin became sin that we might become the righteousness of God. Jesus Christ took the weight of sin, the punishment of sin upon himself on that cross. He went to that cross being fully God, truly man. He, as a man, could be a substitute for you and I. And as God, he can pay an eternal fine for more than one person. Because of his nature, because of who he is, this is what makes Christianity unique from every religion. Because it's not about the things we do, it's what Jesus did. It's that he, in his nature, specifically who he is, that when he died on that cross, he made the punishment, he took the punishment of sin that you and I have done upon himself. He suffered that full thing. You say, but that was only a few hours he was on the cross. But he is an eternal being. And being an eternal being, he can experience that eternally. So it's who he is. And so what we end up seeing is that it is only through Jesus Christ that we get forgiveness of sins. What Christianity is about Jesus Christ. The fact that he came and died on a cross as a payment of sin, that you and I who did the crimes could be set free. And if we recognize how much we deserved hell and Christ forgave us of that, then we want to love him and serve him. It's a motivation change. We're not trying to make ourselves better. We can't. We're trying to please Christ. We're trying to please the one we love. And that's the more important message than any of the stuff that could be politically. And if people in this country understood the true gospel message clearly, if that was being preached everywhere in this country, I think we would have a different country because they'd stop putting a substitute gospel of God is love. God loves me the way I am. God should love me. I'm still getting the emails from the guy that wants to, argue for gay Christianity, to say that you could have affirming Christianity. And the reality is, no, that's blasphemy. That makes a mockery of who Christ is. So what we need is the right gospel, the true gospel of the Bible, to be spread. That's what we need, and we need a revival. So my challenge to those of you listening who are Christians, are you willing to stand up about politics and argue for Trump or third-party candidate or whoever you want? Then how much more should we be willing to stand up and preach the gospel? How much more should you be carrying tracts with you so you can hand people tracts so that they get the gospel? How much more as Christians should we be about the business of the gospel? That's my challenge. And just to let you know, tonight we were supposed to have, let you guys know that some of the shows we got coming up for you. We got a lot of good shows, I think, coming up. We were supposed to have the godless grandma on here. She is someone who claims she was a Christian for many, many years, decades. She's now a proud atheist, promotes the LGBT community. And she responded to Leighton Flowers on the issue of God's sovereignty and human responsibility. And someone asked me, well, would you respond to this? I said, better yet, I reached out to her and said, would you come on? And I can answer the questions you're raising about God's sovereignty and human responsibility. That'll be a fun discussion. So that didn't happen today because she couldn't make it, which was fine. We rescheduled. So next week, I'll have John Harris on. John Harris from Conversations That Matter podcast. We're going to talk a little bit about Christian nationalism because someone sent us a video to review, can we say sermon? Yikes. It was about a 20-minute lecture. We'll call it a lecture maybe because there wasn't any Bible in it, really. Other than when it was taken out of context, and warning the church against Christian nationalism. I'm not really a big fan of Christian nationalism, but we'll talk about that. John is, so it'll be a good discussion. But we're going to review a video that, yikes, I'm just saying you want to be there for next week. There will be no show on the 8th because of the Vail conference that I mentioned already. So if you want to be part of that church, the Vail Valley Baptist Church, that is going to be the 8th to 10th. So the conference starts that night. So we won't be doing a show that night. But on the 15th, I'll have an atheist on. We had him on before. His name is Bill. I had a debate with him in Texas. And this is going to be an interesting one, Chris, because the topic we have come up with is, have atheists gone too far? Mm-hmm. This is an atheist who loves Justin Peters' ministry, and he thinks atheists have gone too far. And so I agree with him. But we're going to talk about guys that, basically talk about, you have Bill Maher and others who are coming out and saying we need more of a Christian influence. So that will be on the 15th. On August 22nd, we'll have Godless Grandma on. Actually, I have the dates wrong. John Harris is coming on the 29th. So I don't have anything for next week. So we'll figure, I might have to move to see if Matt Slick is available because I scheduled him for September 1st. And I think we need to do that August 1st because all of September, let me look at so September is going to be counseling month. We have some of our speakers at Striving for Eternity, our ACBC counselors. My pastor and his wife are ACBC counselors. They will all be on. The topics we're going to cover, different counseling topics. I don't know if we're going to get to all of them, but we are going to talk about anger, anxiety, communication, depression, marriage, money, parenting, and sexual sins. And so those are the list of things we plan to cover in September. So we have a lot of good shows coming up for you. I'll have something planned for October when we get closer. But this was a longer show. I try not to go too long. I hope this was helpful. Thank you for the 250 people that were watching live. Hope to see you guys next week. It is good, Chris, that you could come in last minute, especially with this topic and your background being law enforcement. It fit in well.
Glad to be here, brother.
To go to check out Voice of Reason Radio, and you can hear his wisdom with his co-host there, Richard Story. So I encourage you to check that out. And remember to strive to make today an eternal day for the glory of God. And we'll see you next week.